Now, our first speaker is Jørn Larsen of Trifork. Jørn started sailing in his yellow wooden Optimist as a young child, didn't we all? Since then, he has been passionate about sailing. 7 years ago, he acquired through Trifork the former Ericsson 4 Open 70. And from then on, it was all about fast sailing and breaking sailing records. Jørn founded Trifork, an international IT group focusing on the development of innovative software solutions in 1996. And it will be the presenting partner for the city of Aarhus, the first Danish city ever to host the ocean race in May to June 2023. Jørn began his professional career with AP Møller-Mærsk in 1984 and entered the IT business in 1994 with Data AS in Denmark. Jørn is a serial entrepreneur in the Nordic technology space and has co-founded more than 50 startups. He obtained a mechanical engineering degree as well as a civil engineering degree in computer science from the University of Aalborg. So over to you, Jørn.
Thank you so much. What a nice introduction, and what a great company here. I'm really humbled by these two great sailors who sail a lot more than I do. But I just want to encourage you all that even if you sail less, you can still make your sailing count. And here's a recipe on how you can do that. So my talk is really about breaking records, and we will see a lot of pictures, and we will see how you get your head into something like this. Because many times in life we don't really know what Pandora's box we are opening, and certainly I didn't when I accidentally bought a big sailboat together with my company and colleagues of Trifork. And many of the colleagues have been out sailing, and we always have fun. Sometimes we are a little bit scared, but it's always a great experience. So I guess we already went through this. So just a little bit about record sailing. There's not a long list here because it takes a long time to prepare a record. Sometimes you will have to wait 7-8 years for the weather to be right, because sailing records are normally done through regattas, and maybe the regatta is only once a year and you need to have certain weather. So sometimes I've been waiting at the start line of a regatta or just an hour before, and then decided in the last moment to actually just fly home, because I do have a day job and I need to make my sailing count. So then you wait another year, or you start another record attempt, and in the meantime you go and practice as often as you can. So this is a list of what I've been doing. So in 2015, I was very lucky to go with Brunel. So the Brunel in the Volvo Ocean Race, they invited me to join a sailing across the Atlantic. And that's probably where it really kicked in, my passion for breaking records. Because we were actually lucky, and we had super nice weather and a nice crew. So we crossed the Atlantic in 8 days and 7 hours. And that's fairly fast, because most other boats takes 2 or 3 weeks to cross the Atlantic from Las Palmas to St. Lucia. And that was amazing. And I don't want to go through all these, but I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the round Mallorca record, which we did in 13 hours, 15 minutes. And that was actually through a storm called Gloria. But we didn't know it had that name when we started, but we soon realized what we were heading into. And after it looked a little bit crazy, but everything was safe during the race, because we had very skilled people on board, very skilled sailors. And also for the future, we have planned some upcoming records, and we are preparing for these. We need to place the boat in the right place. We need to have the gear ready, and yeah, so there's a lot of preparation going into sailing, but you probably all know that. So I'd like to just start by playing a video that says a little bit about what we are doing.
When I saw this boat the first time, I think this is a really good project for Trifork to take care of. All these boats, you can say, are modern classics, and if nobody takes care of them, they will just pass away and not be used for anything. So we take a great pride in taking care of preserving this piece of engineering art.
Axel, we're coming up to the north part of the island, and what are your predictions so far?
Well, it's blowing 30 knots right now, so I think it's going to come up probably another 10 almost.
Yeah.
So we're going to come around here and then see if we can keep the boat in one piece. That's what it's about now. Yeah. I'm still hoping for 12 hours, so it can be fast. If we go together, then I think it's achievable still.
Thank you. So actually the soundtrack was a little bit off, but that doesn't really matter because you can actually go to YouTube and find this video yourself. If you just search for Trifolk breaking the Mallorca record, you will find the whole video. It's around 8 minutes long, and I think it's an amazing video. And because what you can also see when you are breaking records, you don't have a lot of wind all the time. Actually, the wind almost died on us on the south part of Mallorca in this record attempt. And then it was really breezy on the north side. So that's when you sail around islands, that's pretty tricky because the wind shadow is very vast. So, and here is a picture from just 2 hours before the finish line. And here it's pretty calm again. And with a beautiful sunset over Dragonero. And this picture is taken with a drone from Mallorca itself, which is behind the boat here. And so when we go out, everyone else is kind of staying inside because the weather will normally look something like a hurricane-like weather with the waves flooding towns around the Mallorca coast. And so you have to be a little bit odd to go out in these conditions. So basically, where did it all start? And actually, this guy Rasmus Küstner, he's a professional sailor. He's now sailing GP, these a catamaran that goes more than 100 kilometers per hour on a small racetrack, and try not to hit each other too much and damage people and material. So actually, he gave me this book, and it was standing on my bookshelf for a while, and I think it beamed some signals into my brain. Because a few years later, I actually bought the boat you see on the cover of this book, which is kind of mind-blowing to think about being a pretty normal sailor like me. So actually, I was walking in France one day, in southern France, and I saw this boat for sale, Sanya. And my good friend, Jens Dolmer, he said, "You're not going to buy that boat. That's the wrong one. You need this boat." And he explained why. Because it won, because it never really got any damage, and it's a super strong boat, but it's also a flexible boat because boats cannot just be strong, they need to be equally bendable around the different structures so you don't have any stress points. And this boat is designed by Juan Kay, who is a brilliant naval architect, and here he actually explained how the canting keel system works to someone. And he actually designed all the Volvo 70s that won the Volvo Ocean Race. So this he did really well, and he's still designing some amazing boats now for Swan. When I first saw the boat, it looked like this. It was standing on a container wrapped in plastic on top of some containers in Lorient in France. And that was in 2013. And we actually entered through the keel box. So that I found even cooler because it was all wrapped in. And the only way we could get in was under the boat. So there's actually a big hole in the middle of the boat where the canting keel is attached. And we entered through that. And here are some pictures from the very first moment where I saw the boat. And I just thought, it looked super cool. I could see there was probably a little bit of work to do. But we decided to just go ahead, and the boat was put in the water. It had a sea trial. There was a few problems, but they were fixed. And then we had to simply just take it from Lorient to the Met, and we had a base in Valencia to go to. And how hard can it be? We were a couple of people, 5 sailors, and it all started out very well. But I tell you, when you go on these boats, and the breeze is coming up, strange thing happens, and sometimes you are in for an experience. And so happened to us at the tip of at Spain, at Costa del Morta. And there's a reason for that name, I guess, because I ended up like this. And 48 hours later, I was in Switzerland in a private hospital. And that was not a pleasant journey, I tell you. I don't want to go into details, but the boat survived. I also survived with a little bit of bones broken and etc. So I learned the hard way that when you go sailing like this is a lesson I want to pass on to you. If you get tempted, then you actually have to bring really good sailors. They can make you look really good, but you have to bring your A game, and you have to bring really experienced sailors. And on that trip, I learned that the hard way. So after we arrived to Valencia, we decided to really give the boat a big refit. Everything was taken off. Everything was serviced. You see, there are hundreds of components. They are sent to different parts of the world. They are being examined. They are being refitted and x-rayed. And many of these components here are either titanium or very expensive pieces. And some of it is made in Italy, and some of it in UK. And that's pretty exciting. And when you see all this, you say, oh, will it ever be a boat again? But it did. So on these two pictures, you can see that we are still reusing some Groupama sails, because sails for these boats are expensive, and we try to use up all the sails we had and get the best out of it. And this is actually racing in Copa del Rey. And then one day, Juan K, he called us. He said, I have a gift for you. And well, that sounds nice when you are offered a gift. And the gift was that he said, I know you like to sail fast. And even though the Volvo 70, the Ericsson 4 is a very fast boat, I can make it faster, he says. And I said, okay, I'm all ears. What do we have to do? So he suggested us to optimize the keel. You know, that's counterintuitive. You cut off a lot of weight from the keel, and you empty just the boat from anything you don't really need. And actually, we managed to find 3,000 kilos out of 14,000 kilos and reduce the weight. And we introduced even some extra water ballast tanks. We also called up Team New Zealand, because from the AC-72, these big catamarans that were racing in San Francisco, he said, you know, you're probably not going to like the bill from building your own foils. So I found 2 on this planet that you can use, but you have to be very smart about getting them. Probably don't say you need it for this boat. Say you need it for a bar in a clubhouse somewhere. And we did. So we almost got these 2 foils for free. So thank you, Team New Zealand. We have used them a lot and we enjoy them. We also added more length to the bowsprit. And today the boat looks like this. And actually the picture to the right there is the first time where, after actually sailing 3 weeks, that the weather conditions were perfect. And we were just constantly locking between 25 and 30 knots of speed in fairly flat water. And so the boat is really now designed to just go downhill, so with the wind, and going as fast as we can. So when you do record sailing, you really need to prepare a lot, and you are waiting and waiting and waiting for the right weather. And when the weather forecast looks red, and sailors will know that then it's pretty breezy, then you say, well, now it's time to go. And many times you actually have to call your start a few days before. So there's also a little bit about luck and timing. And then you need to get the best crew. You cannot just have crews sitting there for many days. So you have a list of super nice skilled crews. And then you call them and say, who wants to break the Mallorca record? And these guys, very experienced Spanish sailors we see here. We see Jens as well. And more of them here, and all of them, they have been sailing multiple times around the world, racing. And actually, there was this remarkable thing about this record, and that was that the wave state in the Met was actually record high. You see here, this is a buoy that actually measures the wave state, and you actually see that up to 14 meters of wave, exactly where we were sailing on the north coast. So that was exceptionally rough. So we actually had to reduce speed quite a lot to survive. And the day after, you know, we were heroes. And I'm sure if we have broken the mast or something, we would have been fools. So there's a thin line between being a hero and a fool. We were lucky to bring the boat and everyone safely back, and we got some good media coverage. But also, it's important that it is not for everyone. You have to be super careful, because the same storm that we broke the record in, a lot of the beaches on Mallorca, they actually look like this. So you really have to be super careful. This is dangerous stuff. You have to respect Mother Nature a lot. So just summing it up, the distance we sailed on this particular record was 169 nautical miles. And when you go across the Atlantic, it's either 2,800 or 3,200 miles, so quite a lot longer. We reached the max speed of 32 knots, which we actually hit a few times. And the average speed was 12.7, and in roughly 10 meters of waves. So that sums up my talk, and I hope you learned a few things and enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jørn, for that fascinating talk. I'm amazed that anybody would want to go out in those conditions, but obviously it's fascinating. All I can say is that I now know why I've given up competitive sailing and just go cruising. So thank you very much for that. We'll have questions for you at the end, Jørn. Right, moving on. Our second speaker is Ian Herbert Jones. Ian is an international business executive working primarily in the high-tech sector, and an amateur adventure sailor with about 25 years and over 45,000 miles sailing experience. Ian first learned to sail while serving in the British Army as an engineer in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. He has completed one circumnavigation with the Clipper Round the World Yacht Race, and he is now preparing for the Golden Globe race in 2022. This is a solo, non-stop and unassisted race around the world using only traditional navigation techniques and without the aid of modern technology. Ian's sailing base is in North Wales. Thank you, Ian. Sorry, I had to avoid pronouncing the name.
Pathetic, Paul.
Over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that, Paul. In fact, I think Paul just summed it up, guys, so we could probably make the presentation really quite quick tonight. So first of all, thank you everyone that's listening in and attending. It's really Jørn said he was humbled, but I'm gonna try and trump that, because I've got some real imposter syndrome issues going on tonight, being sandwiched between Jørn and his VO70 record breaking, and Charlie and his Vendée Globe achievements just recently. I do feel like the odd guy out in the middle of this amazing performance sandwich. But unlike Charlie, who's just come back from an amazing adventure, I'm planning on an adventure. So tonight, what I'd like to do is give you a bit of an introduction to the history of the Golden Globe race, to the new modern incarnation of the Golden Globe race and what happened in 2018, to my own plans for 2022 and my attempt to take part in this race. So to understand the modern race, you kind of got to go back in history a little bit, and I'm pretty confident that a lot of people listening to this tonight know this history, but just to capture it pretty quickly, this really all goes back to 1968, when the Sunday Times decided to set a race around the world that would be solo and non-stop, so single-handed, non-stop sailing race around the world. In fact, it was actually already a movement. There were a lot of sailors around the world that saw this as the last great record to be broken, and they were going to go and try this anyway. And the Sunday Times, being a very clever commercial organization, said, hey, let's make this a race. And the Golden Globe race was born. Now, again, many of you would have heard this story before. 9 men, as it was, 9 men, 9 competitors, nine skippers started that race, and only one finished, and that was Mr. Robin Knox-Johnson, who later became Sir Robin, as many of us know now, in his little 32-foot ketch Suhali. Also famously from that race, another name that many of us in sailing know, and books that we've read, is the famous French skipper Bernard Metissier, who famously didn't finish the race because he chose not to, and he sailed off back to the Pacific. The story says to save his soul, but he didn't want to be involved in all the commercialness around the race, and he was sailing his wonderful boat, steel ketch Joshua, which you can see there on the left of the screen. So that race, that event, kind of set the scene, I think, for solo racing from there on. It changed the world. It proved that it could be done. Before this race, Sir Francis Chichester had circumnavigated alone, but had stopped once. And so this race then proved it could be done alone, non-stop. And from there on until today, we just continue to break records in terms of the time, the speed that we can do this race in. So that was the history. That's back 50 odd years ago now. So then fast forward to about 2015, when the gentleman in the top left here, Mr. Don McIntyre, kind of re-envisaged or reinvented the idea of this race to bring it to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Robin Knox-Johnson's original achievement. And he decided to recreate the event, recreate a solo, unassisted, non-stop, east-about sailing race around the world. But this time to make it a retro race, to only to use boats that were similar to those that were used back in 1968. So these are standard production cruising boats. And very importantly, only to use the technology that was available to Robin and Bernard Metissier and the other competitors back in 68, 69. And in doing that, I believe that what Don was trying to do is make a race for every person, that anyone could attempt to take part in. So bringing the spirit, as it says here, stepping back to the golden age of solo sailing, really to review and go back to that spirit of adventure above winning at all costs. So Don, with the support of Les Sables d'Olonne, this is the mayor, Yannick of Les Sables d'Olonne, was the mayor today anyway, and got a lot of support from the city there in Brittany, and they hosted the race and gave it a home. And because of these two gentlemen on the screen, this race was born. 2015, 2016, 2017, competitors signed up, and eventually at the start line in 2018, 18 competitors kicked off and left for this race. Now, the racing numbers is quite interesting. So this obviously went over 2018, 2019, 18 competitors, 13 countries represented. So it's truly international event. Of those 18 competitors, only 5 boats, 5 skippers finished the race. So quite a dramatic dropout rate. You can see the numbers there. 13 skippers obviously retired for various reasons, breakages to their boats, the stress of the race. Unfortunately, 5 boats were dismasted. So, this is a serious event. It's not a game by any stretch of the imagination. And all of those skippers were great skippers with well-prepared boats. And this type of thing can still happen when you go to the south and start to race around these oceans. Luckily, I say great credit to the race. All of those skippers were rescued safely and are all back home and carrying on with their day jobs. And it was all came good. Finally, the race was won by Jean-Luc Van der Heide, very famous French skipper, many of you would have heard of, and he completed the race in 212 days. Now, to go back into history a little bit, I forgot to say, Robin's original circumnavigation, Robin Knox-Johnson's, was completed in 312 days. So 312 days, and Jean-Luc finished in 212. So a vast difference. And just to give you the other end of the spectrum, and Charlie will be talking next, I think Charlie's Vendée Globe was 80 days. So, the world has moved on at an incredible pace. As I say, 5 boats finished, including the little red boat in the middle of the picture there, which is Puffin, which is my boat, skippered by Istvan Kopper. and I'll talk about Puffin in a moment. And Istvan successfully completed the race in 4th place. And just to give a mention to Tapio here, who came in the 5th place and the last skipper to arrive home. Tapio took 322 days to complete this race. So if you just take a moment to think about that and think about what that means to set off alone around the world, single-handed, without outside support, and to be away for 322 days. Jean-Luc is amazing, but I think Tapio and all the skippers are amazing. Anyone that completes this race is incredible. But that was a particular feat in its own right. And Tapio is an amazing gentleman and a glutton for punishment, because he's also signed up for the 2022 race. So he's doing the whole thing again. So that was 2018, 2019, and that brings us kind of almost up to date now, and what I call my race, the Golden Globe race 2022. Same format, effectively. It's still a circumnavigation via the Great Capes and the Southern Ocean, 30,000 miles approximately, still non-stop, still unassisted, and it's still a retro event, so without the aid of modern technology. This is the route. It changed a little bit. You'll see that we talk about photo gates. So if you think about what we now call the ocean race, those guys race in legs from port to port at extreme speeds, and then they stop. And then the crowd see the racers in the port. In Charlie's race in the Vendée Globe, it's non-stop, and there's no such thing as photo gates, but they're streaming live video. It's an amazing event to watch. In the Golden Globe, and partly to celebrate some of the events that happened in the original 1968 event, we will sail into certain bays around the world and essentially have a photo shoot, an opportunity for the media to interview the skippers whilst they're still at sea. So skippers will literally drop sail and drift for up to an hour in several places around the world. The Canaries, just off Cape Town, and Storm Bay in Tasmania. You can just see down there on the bottom of the screen. And then finally in Uruguay on the way back up the South Atlantic in Punta del Este. So there'll be 4 photo gates, but it is a non-stop event. So there will be an opportunity to see the skippers come in and talk to the crowds as such. Now, my personal mission for this route is to try and complete this race in less than 266 days. And that seems like a bit of a random number, but my boat, Puffin, has done this race before, and that was the time it took her last time. Istvan was skippering her at that time. It'll be me in 2022, but it's just my little personal ambition. So just in case that's not challenging enough to navigate your way around the world solo, non-stop and unassisted, just to make things a bit more interesting, as I mentioned, GGR is a retro race, and what that means is that we also are retro from a technology perspective. So you can see on the slide here, you can see all the things that we're not allowed. In fact, the list of things I'm not allowed seems to be a lot longer than things that we are allowed. But it's no GPS, it's no chart plotters, and very importantly for the skippers, it's no weather routing software, right? Which today can be amazing and are really important tools. However, we will be doing it the way it was done back in the late 60s and early 70s. We will be using barometers, we will be using barographs, we will be using our chronometers to keep time. And we will also have the benefit of the same radio technology they had back then, which is for us sailors, is HF radio, SSB radio. So we'll be tuning into normal marine broadcasts for weather. And I guess I'll be listening to the BBC for my time signals, so I can accurately use my sextant and my navigation tables to work out where I am. So yes, just to make it more difficult, we've made it a retro race. However, we do live in the 21st century, and as you might understand, there is a safety net around the race, which worked incredibly well in 2018. Every boat will be equipped with EPIRBs, as you might guess, satellite phones for emergency. And interestingly, there'll be a tracker. Every boat will have multiple trackers on board, and the output from those trackers, you guys and everyone, the public, will be able to follow the race live on the internet and be able to see exactly where the competitors are at any given time and see the weather conditions that they're in. And many of us that follow races will be familiar with the format. I think what's the great irony of this, of course, is that all of you guys will almost certainly know exactly where I am in the world. However, I may not. So, and by the way, you can't call me and let me know. A little bit more flavor of the race. So touch wood, there'll be 30 competitors starting the race in September in 2022, possibly more. And the competitors for the Golden Globe are a really interesting bunch. They come from a very wide and disparate background. We've got full, professional skippers that are on a path in their career who may be fully sponsored to do this race. We've got people that are multi-circumnavigators already, incredibly experienced sailors. And then we've got the Corinthian class, if that makes sense, or the adventure class of sailors where it's kind of where I put myself. Well, it is where I put myself as well. So it's an interesting group. It's a really interesting group. And if we had more time, I'd like to drop in and talk about a few of these characters on the screen. Probably one of the most interesting, I should say, on here is David at the top. If you stare very close, you'll see David Scott Calper. David is, I wouldn't say how old he is, but it's definitely more than 70 and less than 80. And David, I believe, was the first man to sail in both directions around the world through the Southern Oceans, solo, non-stop and unassisted in the late 70s and the early 80s. So an incredibly experienced skipper. And he's also got a trade wind 35. So he and I are in close contact. So they're the skippers. I thought next, actually, if that's okay, Claire, we'd put a short video on for about 1.5 minutes, and that'll give you a bit more of a feel for the spirit of the event. Hopefully it plays.
You're out on the sea. You are a small person in that big ocean. You just feel free, very free.
Everything becomes so clear. You see clearly the important people in your life.
You, the boat, and the weather combined together. It's just about the best experience you can have.
With the passing of the months, it's going to be a very tough job, a very long job, a very happy job.
A good shot of the sun and accurate calculations. There's nothing more satisfying than that.
You are thankful, in a way, for that you are a human, not that you have the chance, that you can do it.
I'm hoping I can find that peace again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Claire. So that was a little promo video. Clearly, there were images from the 2018 race there going on, and the competitors there. It's pretty atmospheric. Hopefully, I think you'll agree. So that's the history. That's what the Golden Globe's all about. I'm already running over time, so I'll speed up and tell you a little bit about myself and my preparations. Paul introduced me. I won't repeat myself too much. One thing I'd like to mention is I am a member of RIN. I'm very pleased to say I was invited to join RIN recently, so I'm very proud to be a member of RIN. So I put the logo up there. I am, as Paul mentioned, if I first started sailing in the Army, I did not have an optimist way back when, and I didn't know sailing was a hobby. I thought it was adventure training. So that's kind of where I started. And one of the things that Paul mentioned is I had the opportunity to do a clipper race, which some of you would have heard of. This is the This is the amateur around the world sailing race that was put together by Sir Robin Knox-Johnson many years ago now, which is a crewed race, cruise on 70-foot boats racing around the world with stops in legs. An amazing experience. I was a mate on my boat for the majority of that race. I was away from home for 10 months. What was interesting is that was a crewed race. There was 16, 17, 18 people on the boat at times. And when I got off that boat, I think it was set in my mind that I wanted to do that again. And it's I'm not saying anything about my lovely crew, but I wanted to do it again alone next time. So let's kind of set the seed in motion. It's taken some years to get to where I am now. So, okay, so that's me, the boat. Let's talk about the boat, Puffin. Puffin is my partner in this adventure. She's my home, my transport, my life support system. She's going to be my world for up to 9 months. She's probably one of the most, after my family, she's probably one of the most important things in my life right now. And she will be for the next couple of years. I mean, she really holds everything. She holds all my food and she holds all my dreams in the same place. She's a Tradewind 35 for those who are interested in that type of thing. She's designed in the late 70s by a gentleman called John Rock. As you can see, she's long-keeled, she's cutter-rigged, and she's been extremely heavily strengthened already by Istvan before me. And I'm spending this time now to continue on the work that Istvan had done to this boat to essentially upgrade her further. And without going into details, essentially, these boats have everything that your normal cruising boat would have on board, but more so. So I need to be off-grid and completely self-sustained for a long period of time. And you can imagine some of the things you want to do. That boat is my life support system. So it has to be 100%. So we are working through the boat and improving things as we go in every way we can. And at the moment, this is in preparation for some longer qualifying passages and sort of sea trials that I want to do this year. So hopefully this year we'll be able to do about 4,000 miles in her, solo, using sextant navigation, using wind vane steering because there's no auto helms and so on, in the format that we'll do the race. And then I'll do the same again next year. Okay, keeping moving on. So it's a solo race, but you can't do it alone. That's what they say. And it couldn't be more true. So a quick mention to some of my team, and the team is expanding. It's a huge challenge to pull a campaign like this together, and you simply can't do it alone. And it's been a wonderful experience actually to sort of gather a team of people around me, of volunteers and supporters that have been amazing so far. And we'll need more, please. Always open for volunteers. Over the next 12 months, we're going to get busier and busier. That goes along with sponsorship. As I say, pulling together an event like this is incredible. I'm sure Charlie would say the same. Without some support, it's really hard to do. And I've been very lucky. Some personal sponsors have stepped up and helped us buy equipment. And some of these companies I mentioned here have stepped up and supported the campaign with equipment. It makes a huge difference. But sponsors are still wanted. You always want a sponsor. And we thought about calling the boat Sponsor Wanted once because that was an idea of Don's. But if you know anybody, let me know. But it's enough to say it's a huge challenge to get to the start line of an event like this, and you can only do it with the support of a really great team around you. That's built into somewhat of a community, both around the GGR and around myself and Puffin and our campaign. I can't tell you what a fantastic community the GGR has become. And I think it's just simple as a strap line up there, you know, promoting these values that people understand and buy into. So it's been a wonderful experience so far, just preparing to get ready, and hopefully that will follow through into next year. Now I'm trying to catch up with myself, Paul, just to summarize, right, after all of that, some facts and figures on the screen here, but really this is my personal challenge. Yes, it's a race around the world. Yes, it's 30,000 miles in some of the, you know, wildest places on the planet. But I will be unplugged. So for me, this is about unplugging for that period of time. I say truly alone, and I think we really are truly alone when you do this. And this is all about being self-reliant. It's not just about being away from family. It's really about making all those decisions by yourself. And I think an interesting quick takeaway is the self-sufficiency element of it, right? When we think about our sustainable world now and what we need to do, you know, I'm going to be unplugged and off-grid and self-sufficient for 9 months at sea. And it's quite an interesting experiment in itself. But finally, all that taken into account, I have to do this by myself, and it's an event that I'll do alone, and it is my personal ocean sailing adventure. And I'm hoping that you'll all follow me and keep in touch and reach out, and hopefully I'll see you at the start line. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. Fascinating introduction to the race, and quite a number of questions coming through, which we'll take later. Thank you very much for that. Moving on now to Charlie. Charlie Dalin is a French offshore sailor and naval architect. He began sailing at the age of 6 and has never stopped. After his engineering degree in naval architecture from the University of Southampton, he worked around the world with many offshore sailing teams before launching his own solo sailing career. After finishing second in the Mini Transat 6.50 in 2009, he moved into the demanding Figaro circuit, where he was welcomed on the podium many times from 2012 to 2018. Supported by Group Massif, Charlie joined the Amoca circuit. His Amoca Apiva was launched in August 2019 and soon became one of the favorites. Winner of the Transat Jacques Vabre a few months later. Sorry, I've mispronounced that. Anyway, over to you, Charlie.
Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. So like Paul said, I've started sailing. Oh, I've missed one. No, sorry, it's perfect. Sorry, I apologize. So yeah, I've started sailing fairly early, fairly rare to mention. I don't come from sailing family, so it's really a passion that I've developed myself. Obviously, as a child, that was not a passion then. I was just I was on family vacation in Brittany, and my mother put me into an optimist course for the week, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed the freedom of going where I wanted to, when I wanted to, just with the with the wind, and I felt that was pretty magical, and I really enjoyed this feeling of freedom you get when sailing, and when I came back home in Le Havre, that's where I was born. I kept sailing and never stopped since, and I started competition fairly late. I started my first proper racing I did. I was 15, so I did like 3 years in the 420 circuit at the national level, shall I say? And at the time, this hobby of mine was sailing really started to grow in me, and I became more and more into this sport, more and more obsessed by sailing, by boats, by racing. There's the Transat Jacques Vabre, like you talked about, Paul, earlier. Starts from Le Havre, so it's an event that takes place every 2 years, and so I would go to the docks and look at this magnificent racing machine and dream watching them, and I think that was also part of my that's also contributed to my fascination and admiration to sailing, and especially offshore racing, and because I didn't know anyone in the sailing world, and also I could see that professional sailing was something which was not achievable by all the person that wanted to, and so I decided to go to Southampton University to get my degree. So I went there just after my the French equivalent of the A levels, and I spent 4 years there from 2002 to 2006. That's where I kept sailing a lot in the Solent, sail on many boats there, including the Far 52 Bay of Britain, and I started learning more about bigger boats, and sailing kept growing in me. By that time, that was really a passion, and once I graduated, I started a cycle where I would work on naval architecture projects and finance my sailing with the money I would earn. And so I worked around the world. I worked in Australia on various projects. I worked in a year in Sweden, Stockholm, building on the build on the Ericsson 3, Ericsson 4. Actually, Jørn, that was funny seeing the boat, because on some of the photos I can see bits of design, which was, so it's good memories for me. So yeah, I think we're living in a small world somehow, or maybe the sailing world is small, I don't know. But yes, so I actually work a lot on your boat, and afterwards, I worked also a bit in Thailand, and once at this stage, I think maybe 2 years, 3 years after this. But yeah, 2 or 3 years after my degree, I was kind of on a crossroad. I felt like there was a time whether I had to decide whether to keep into boat building, naval architecture related boat building, or go into sailing. I always want to be at the top of what I do, and I felt like I couldn't be at the top of both game, shall I say, and that's where I decided to kind of like let all this network I've created with Kilian Bush and Juan Cuyum-Jean and try to go into sailing. So that's where I decided to buy a mini transat, and I entered the mini transat in 2009. And that's really where I got the answer that offshore sailing was for me, because until I didn't have much doubt, but until you actually do it, you don't really know if offshore single-handed is for you or not. If you're made for it, if you're made for offshore, for single-handed offshore sailing. So in the middle of the mini transat, the second leg from for me, that was Madeira to Brazil. That I was really happy on the boat, and that's where I started thinking, okay, so we in 2009, what's going on in 2010? What race could I do there? And so that's how I got the answer. Like an indirect answer of yes. I'm made for I'm compatible with offshore sailing and actually really enjoy it. And afterwards, that's actually when I was working in Sweden on the Ericsson project that I first started dreaming about having my own IMOCA boat, my own IMOCA 60. But I felt at that time that I was sailing level, and my sailing skills in general was not up to that level, obviously. And so I started, after the mini transat, I started sailing in the Figaro class. So it's a one design class, very, very competitive class in France. And I sailed in this class for 8 years. And that's where I really, the competitive part of sailing, that's where I learned a lot about, competition performance. And it's a very performance driven class. You tune everything you can, and you really don't leave any stone unturned. And to me, it's a class that really makes good sailors, because you cannot rely on your technology, on the technology you have on the boat. It's everyone's got the same boat, and it's up to the sailor to make the difference. And once at the end of my Figaro years, I started to feel that was time for me to try to get into the Vendée Globe. Because obviously, when you're passionate about offshore sailing, single-handed offshore sailing, obviously the biggest, the most famous, the hardest race well, sorry, and if you take obviously, so it's the Golden Globe race, which is back now. But actually, the Vendée Globe is the modern Golden Globe race. With all the technologies, with the foiling technologies, with weather routing, satcoms, and everything. And that's why I felt like I was good enough to try to enter that race with a competitive level, with the idea of winning the race. And so Apivia trusted me, and we decided to build. They decided to trust me and to go into building a boat. So we really started from a blank page here. The boat Apivia, my IMOCA was actually made for the Vendée Globe 2020-2021, and we launched in. So the boat we launched in August 19, and obviously, as a naval architect, as a professional sailor. Well, I'm more of a professional sailor now than a naval architect, obviously. Well, I consider myself more of a sailor than a naval architect. But with my background, that really was a huge opportunity for me. There's not many sailors who have the chance to have a boat built for them, and I really grasped this opportunity with both of my hands, and I was a lot involved in the build. The actual designer of the boat is Guillaume Verdier, who's been involved many years with the Team New Zealand America's Cup project, and so I had a lot of input in the design on the cockpit configuration, the ballast, the hull shape, the foil shapes, and so on, and as we were building the boat, obviously you keep in mind that you're going for a race, yes, but it's a long race. It's a 3 months long race. You cannot do pit stops, otherwise you're disqualified. There is no physical assistance. You cannot be helped by a short team on the boat. I mean, the team going on the boat, and so you have to make a boat. You have to find the right compromise between a boat which is fast, light, but also reliable enough to sail around the world without major problems. So you're always on this, navigating between this fine line between between make it like strong and robust and reliable, and but also let's try to keep it light and performance driven. So that was a big challenge, obviously, in the design, and you cannot do. Yeah, I could not do that on my own. I've got a big team around me. We were eight people with sometimes more people around me working on a project. That's 8 people. That's actually my like closest circle, technical team. But I've also a lot of people around me also on the other domain. The big thing with the Vendée is that was my first one, so I kind of got prepared for something I didn't know, which obviously is not easy. And so I tried to gain experience with sailors that have sailed the race before, like François Gabard or Michel Desjoyaux. So I questioned them, especially on rhythm, sleeping pattern. How do you react how do you mentally react when you're alone in the southern oceans and the gale is coming, or just by the fact that you're trying to race as hard as you can, but being so far away from land and assistance. And so I really try to project myself into this on all the levels. What I really try to do is to try to the race to try to take all the adventures, all the potential adventures out of the picture. Trying to you when you start a race, you don't really want it to be an adventure. You want to be in control of everything, but you know that at some point you really catch by adventure and unknown and uncertainties, And so I tried to get ready with this. I did a lot of mental work, mental preparation to try to be able to react in a proper manner in case of problems. And because you know, on such a long race, pushing hard, you know, you're going to have technical problems, but you don't know which one, obviously. So you try to prepare a lot before you're doing. I did a lot of little technical workshop with the team on composite repair, hydraulic maintenance, electronics. All the aspects are covered, but you don't really know what will happen to you, and you have to. The mental part is important as well. I try to work a lot on this aspect with my with the person I work with on this aspect, and there's also this. I worked also on my sleep patterns with the European Sleeping Center in Paris. On the nutrition part as well. My idea was really to try to get nothing, to try to control everything, basically, to not leave anything to the unknown but doing all this, you know that things will happen to you, but everything was going well at the beginning. That I was pretty fast down the Atlantic. I was slightly behind Hugo Boss and Alex Thompson, Thomas Rion by the equator, but I managed to catch them. Unfortunately, Alex had to retire on a rudder problem and structural damages. But in the end, I managed to overtake Thomas Rion, and I was first in rounding Cape of Good Hope. First entering the Indian Ocean. I was first to get to the Cape Lewin. So everything was going pretty well, and everything was going to plan, but maybe too well, actually. When I was in the Indian Ocean, at some point I was like, oh, okay, so what's actually going to happen to me, because it's actually going too close to the plan, and that's what happened to me. If you want to play the
Bon voilà, ma pièce est terminée, ma cale de remplacement. Je vais me mettre à la cape, faire pencher le bateau, et je vais aller voir si j'arrive à la mettre.
Yes, so what I was doing here is, as you may have noticed, is that I was grinding a carbon plate. What happened is I lost my port foil bottom bearing. So basically the foil was only attached, guided by only one bearing. So obviously very moving in all direction, potentially damaging the hull. And so I had to change mode at this time, because at first I thought the race was over. I thought this event happened to me on the 16th of December. I was just I was just south of Australia. I think I entered I just passed the Lewin Cape maybe 1 day or 2 days before, And so yeah, all my world kind of fell apart then, because I thought, okay, well, how can I carry on racing, with this wild fall moving in all directions like this, and my first reaction was, okay, it's over. I'm going to end up in Australia or New Zealand somewhere, and so I called my team, and they were pretty down as well, obviously, but they regrouped. They all met here in our headquarters in Concarneau, and I spent the night working on the solution to try to carry on, to keep racing, and they found a solution. So I received a huge PDF file with countless steps of what to do, what tools to get, to what to do to actually make a bearing replacement, a replacement bearing. And at first I saw the list as no, that's impossible. I will never be able to make it. It's too much work. And but you take the steps line by line, and you go for it, and you actually manage to tick the lines and move forward. And I started working at just when the sail, the problem just arrived at the end of the night, and I worked the entire day from sunrise to sunset to solve the problem, to make this to make and fit this replacement bearing. And it took me a lot of energy. I had to, once the bearing was glued and the resin was cured, I had to hang myself on the side of the boat with a halyard and go underneath the fall to try to fit it in place. And it took me countless. I had to go countless time back and forth to the grinder in the cockpit and back to the side of the boat to adjust the bearing, because that to be a very tight, a very adjusted fit. And that was the hardest part. Grinding the bearing in the cockpit, going on the side, attaching myself to the halyard, going down underneath the fall, see where in which area where there were too much carbon, go back in the cockpit. I don't know how many times I did that, and just as the sun was starting to go down, I told myself, all right, Charlie, now you have to fit it before it's dark time, because otherwise, it's over. You never manage to do it. And just before the sun set, I managed to get it in. And by the time when I started sailing again, once I unfurled my head sail, it was dark time. So I was really close to not succeed in that task. And after that, the race kind of changes, obviously, because obviously I lost my lead. My boat performance were greatly reduced on the starboard tack. I knew that going up the Atlantic, I was going to sail most of my time on starboard, so on the wrong fall. And so I realized that my performance going up the Atlantic were going to be very diminished compared to my competition. So you have to change mode and relearn how to sail the boat, find new way to trim the boat, because I only ever sailed obviously with the foils down before, and now I was sailing with my foil up, foil I could not use at all. And so you have to relearn your boat. You have two different boats on. Apivia I had two Apivia kind of, because on port side I was to my normal potential, and every time I would find myself on starboard tack, that would be a very different boat with different stacking, different way to trim the sails, to use the sails as well, and you have to keep in racing mode somehow, because that all the others have problems as well, and excuse me, and so I did, and few weeks later, somehow I managed to cross the finish line first, and the lesson I've learned from this race is if someone would have told me, all right, Charlie, you're going to manage to get the repair done, and on top of this, you will cross the finishing line first, I was saying, come on, that's not possible, and so maybe because I there's this famous quote, they didn't know it was impossible, so they made it. So that's kind of my story on the race. As you all know, I didn't win the Vendée Globe because time allowance were redistributed to some of my competitors for helping in the rescue of Kevin Escoffier south of Africa. So Indian Yannick Bestaven won the event. But I will not forget this line crossing in first position. And the adventure really caught me. Me who has been really performance driven all my professional sailing career, even before. What always matters for me was to finish first, and performance has always been what motivated me and what how I work. Even in my team, I've got someone whose his sole job is to analyze the data coming out of the boat and to try to optimize all the sail settings, the fall settings. And so I'm a very performance driven sailor. And obviously when you have no choice to keep racing, to basically improvise somehow, and that's really where I felt that this race, even though it's a race, there is a big part of adventure in the Vendée Globe, even though it's a all-out racing event. For all the competitors, at some point you will excuse me, you will be facing unknown and adventure. So that's it for the Vendée, and for just a quick note on my racing program. This year I'll be entering again the Transat Jacques Vabre that I won in 2019, and next year I will be racing the famous Route du Rhum single-handed, and that will be my first time I will be entering the Rhum, and I really hope to be on the start of the next Vendée Globe in 2024. At the moment, my program is with Apivia will finish after the Route du Rhum, and I really I cannot imagine the next Vendée Globe sailing out without me. I really feel like my story with this race is not over well. Thank you for your attention.